Good afternoon, Year 6. Right, ready for our next chapter, chapter 24. So, I think Marlon made a bit of a silly decision at the end of last chapter that he wanted to do one last daredevil dive and get to the bottom of the swimming pool. But we've just found out that his body is starting to reject his heart. So I don't think that's a very good idea. But let's find out what happens now. And just quickly, before we do that, again, some of you sent in some really good comments about whether you thought he was being silly or not. And someone suggested that they think he might end up drowning because he's just not strong enough to do it. So, good prediction. Let's have a look. Marlon, I still don't know why you're here, I said crossly. Today of all days, I didn't want any company while I swam. Today was too important. I was scared but determined. Touching the bottom of the pool was like tossing a coin. Heads, I win. Tails, I lose. I like to swim occasionally too, Marlon replied. But it's not even Tuesday. You and the others only ever come swimming on a Tuesday. Marlon smiled at me. There's no law that says I can't come swimming on a Thursday instead. I was about to argue, but I thought better of it. If I protested too much, Marlon might realise that I was up to something. But I was still annoyed. I bundled my bag and my clothes into a locker and banged it shut. So what have you been doing here every afternoon anyway? Asked Marlon as we both made for the pool. Just kicking about and swimming. I've been trying to build up my strength and stamina. Swimming is brilliant exercise, I replied in what I hoped was an offhand manner. Fancy a race? Just a width but underwater, Marlon challenged. Under normal circumstances, I would have snatched his hand off, but these were hardly normal circumstances. I didn't want to waste any of my energy on a race. I knew I didn't have that much energy to spare. I smiled. Maybe later. I sat down on the edge of the pool and slipped into the water. It was cool, verging on cold, and made me gasp. I held onto the bar which ran around the side of the pool and kicked out leisurely with my legs to warm myself up a little. Marlon dived straight in and immediately struck out for the other edge of the pool. I watched him for a few moments. I was so glad Nan had talked some sense into me. It was a pain that Marlon had insisted on coming to the pool with me today, but I was glad we were still friends. I think if it hadn't been for Nan, I might never have had sense enough to let go of my anger. It was strange the way things turned out. Before my heart operation, everything had seemed so clear. I didn't have long to live, so I knew what my priorities were, my family and my friends. Yet after my operation, for a while, my priorities had become completely messed up. So what was important to me now? I couldn't see past touching the bottom of the pool. My friends had all done it, but that wasn't the reason. Oh, excuse me, Year 6. It was a challenge I'd issued to myself. It was my way of proving that I was as good, as healthy, as deserving of life as anyone else. I looked across the pool. Marlon had almost reached the other side. I'd have to act fast. This was it. Now or never. Do it now, while I was still fresh and had the energy. I let go of the bar and began to tread water. 1, 2, 3, go! I swam to the middle of the pool, took several deep breaths and dived down and down and down. I didn't stop, even when my lungs screamed at me for air, even when my heart shrieked at me to turn back, even when my blood roared at me to stop. I kicked my legs and went down further, and I touched the bottom. It was icy cold beneath my fingers, but I had reached it. Elated, I turned around and kicked against the bottom of the pool to give myself an extra push back up to the surface. Except the surface was a long way away, and halfway up through the water, I knew I wasn't going to make it. Right, I'm not going to read any more, okay? So the next part of the book is called Consequences. Now, I know we started reading this book a very, very long time ago, but I just want you to try and think back to how this book started. So it started with, we knew he was underwater, and it seemed like he was about to drown. I think he says something along the lines of, after everything that's happened to me, this is how I die, or something like that. So I want you to think back to that and think, what has the author done there? Has the author started at a later part in the book and then taken us back and explained and caught us up until now? What do you think the effect of that is? And what do you think is going to happen next? What are the consequences of what Cameron has decided to do? Do you think it's a good thing that Marlon's there? Is Marlon going to be able to help him and save him? Or do you think it's going to have a not so great ending? Have another think as well quickly about which person this book's written in. So it's written in the first person. It's written from Cam's perspective. So if he were to die, how would the rest of the book be written, do you think? From someone else's perspective? Or still his? Just have a little think about that. Make some predictions. Let me know what you think. Right, I'll see you tomorrow.